Happy Thursday, everybody. Josh here with On the Wrong Lead. Another episode of Drankin' Champagne. I am Drank. I'm joined by Champagne, Mr. Andrew Champagne. Andrew, how are you doing, my friend?
Little bit chilly, hence the hoodie that I'm rocking tonight. Shout out to my father-in-law, Bill. This is a darn good hoodie that I'm wearing a lot of in the winter months here. But no, been keeping busy. Lots going on in my neck of the woods as my wife and I plan our trip to Mexico City in April. We're finally starting to get a chance to see what's close to everything else and how we're going to want to attack that. One really good thing we're finding in Mexico City is lots of museum districts where everything is really close to one another. So that's really cool. Did I do something wrong?
No, it's fine. Museums are okay, I guess.
Okay. No, we're nerds. If you have known me for any length of time, you know we're nerds. My wife isn't taking kindly to how we probably aren't going to do anything fitness related for a week in Mexico City because I'm sorry, how many feet above sea level are we going to be
I was
at?
going to say altitude. For the
Yeah.
longest time, that was like the Mexican soccer team's fortress was the Estadio Azteca. It's actually being renovated right now. I don't know if the renovations are done, but they haven't played there in I think a couple years. But that always used to be like impossible to win there because they
Yeah.
would have not used to the altitude. So
Right. But speaking of fortresses, it's funny you mentioned that exact term because the Museum of National History in Mexico is located in this massive castle that my wife and I are both very excited to go to. She wants to see a lot of UNESCO sites, and that's one of them. So we'll be able to cross a couple of those off of that list in the first full week of April. So we're excited about that. Just otherwise, trying to keep my head above water with the Super Bowl coming up in a couple of weeks. That's a big time of year with the job that I am fortunate enough to have, and we're going to try to do what we can to capitalize on that. But far as that goes, that's been pretty much it for me and life in my neck of the woods. Fair amount of handicapping. Been doing a lot of handicapping of Aqueduct, but looking ahead to this Friday, the 16th, I noticed that the card at Gulfstream Park was actually a pretty good one with an appealing late pick four sequence, and we'll get there. But before we do that, Josh, how are you holding up, man?
I'm doing all right, man. Been a busy couple weeks. Work is back in full swing. Obviously, and I'm sure I've talked about this before. We have a very generous PTO policy in my job. We had a couple of weeks off between Christmas and New Year's, and so last week was really like getting back acclimated back to stuff. Seeing where we're at with things, and this week is just been like, hey, everything went from 0 to 60, and we have a bunch of projects going off, so work's been popping off. And then my wife and I, I think I mentioned this on the episode last week, but we're planning our trip to Dublin. So we're going to be going middle of April for that, and just getting excited about that. Trying to figure out the stuff for my 40th birthday party in Vegas is starting to take some shape, so we're starting to plan stuff out for that. So got a couple of fun trips coming up and getting planned. But yeah, other than that, honestly, I've mostly been doing sports betting. And I don't I'm a 100% recreational bettor, so I don't really my handicapping of sports is um very, very vibes. So I'm sure I'm a losing better and all that stuff. So that's why we don't usually. I mean, we don't talk sports necessarily much here because I don't fancy myself much of a handicapper for that. I will say, Andrew, I do think that you do have a knack for the college basketball tournament that I think is a little bit underrated because I think every year the last 3 or 4 years I've texted you, and I mean I want to say especially in like I forget what they call the day, but it's like the day before like the actual tourney starts. Those Wednesday
The
games,
playing games,
the
yeah.
playing games, like you just are like unconscious with those playing games. Like I remember one of the sharpest guys I know. Um, he was on the opposite side of you in something, and I told you my plays, and you were like I like the other side on that one, and sure enough, I think it was like a 2 or 3 leg parlay, and I needed the other side, and Andrew got me, but
Yeah, it's all me. It's all my fault when that stuff happens. It's okay. The rest of Twitter feels the same way you do. Anytime something goes wrong, or anytime I remind someone they've said something they've said, burn the witch. You know, it's you get used to it after a little while. You know, everybody else gets a different set of rules from the one that yours truly gets to play by. But that's life of being Andrew Champagne. And you know what? For the most part, I've accepted that. It means I get to do certain things like what I'm going to do when we go through the eighth race at Gulfstream on Friday. That's called foreshadowing, kids.
yeah, but otherwise, I don't know, Andrew. You know, I'm actually really excited for the um the upcoming games this week for NFL. And obviously, I'm a bit of a homer, so my Bears. I mean, they came back out of nowhere, and it's funny, Andrew. You know, I was never really a big "Hey, let's go to the bar and watch a game" kind of guy. But for big events, I would. I mean, I remember. I want to say it was the first time the Blackhawks won the Stanley Cup during that run. Um, and I remember they scored that goal that nobody knew if it was a goal except for Patrick Kane because he scores. The announcers like don't say anything, and all of a sudden you see him throwing his gloves off and dancing. And um, I remember being at a bar in Aurora, Illinois, and the whole place just starts going nuts. And now, what's funny, Andrew, about this place, it before Circa was a thing. Like, just imagine a that Circa type screen, but it was just at a sports bar. Now this is
Wow.
before wagering, before anything. I mean, they had like big, like 2 or 3 big projection screens, and then they had a bunch of smaller TVs. But it was an entire wall, like that spread. I mean, it was massive, and they actually had an OTB in there as well. But obviously, this is before sports betting or anything. I mean, this is what 20 crap. I don't even remember what year it was. Maybe it's 2010. So, 16 years ago or whatever. But anyways, I remember being there, place going crazy. Well, last week for the last regular season game, I went to the Bears game at this place that was pretty local. Maybe 10, maybe about 20 people in this big space. It was pretty low key, right? It wasn't real busy. So my friends were like, "Hey, we should go watch the Bears Packers game somewhere." And I was like, "Hey, I got the spot. There's this place we went to. It was super quiet. Like it was easy to get into. They had a game on a projection screen. They had a couple of TVs. And I'm like, let's go there. And they're like, all right, we should probably get there like a half hour early just to make sure we get a table and everything. It's like, yeah. Andrew, I get there. The place is elbow to elbow standing room,
Yep.
and I'm like, oh, but so this place is in the backside of it's like a an event space. If you've ever been to like a work function that is in a place that considers itself an event space, like where like
Yep.
maybe there's a bar and there's just a bunch of tables, it's kind of like that. So there's a lot of like room for standing and walking around. The place up by the bar was real busy. It was kind of packed, and but it's attached to a pizza place. So I go to the front and I notice there's like 6 or 7 open tables. And I'm like, hey, like, can we get a table? And they're like, well, do you have a reservation? I'm like, no, do that song and dance. And they're like, well, yeah, they're like, I think we have 2 people in front of you, and obviously like you're looking, there's like 6 or 7 tables open. So you're like, just give us like, yeah, exactly, just give us like 10, 15 minutes, and I think we'll be able to seat you. And so luckily, my friends start rolling in. It was just four of us, and sure enough, they were able to seat us. Didn't have like the greatest view. I mean, there were like five TVs that we could see, but we were pretty far away from them. But it wasn't really a big issue. But I'll tell you what, Andrew, I think that's something that like I've missed is like sitting there watching the game with a bunch of people because man, people were living and dying by every play, and obviously that first half from the Bears was just absolutely dreadful. So watching that and like it was just quiet. We're just like sitting there. We're kicking back Yinglings like they're going out of style, eating pizza and wings, and um, and sure enough, Andrew, that second half, man, that place got loud. I high fived more people than I can remember. People were just going table to table, just going nuts. My buddy, after the game, there's a guy with a Favre jersey walking outside the restaurant. My buddy just waves to him, and the guy just flips him the bird. I mean, it was great. I mean, just it was phenomenal. And like I said, like I haven't I've yet to do March Madness in Vegas, and I'm sure March Madness is got a similar vibe, but like it kind of stoked that like desire to maybe try and do it again. And obviously, I have a bunch of trips this year planned already, but I think maybe next year, um, if the guys are wanting to do the yearly trip, we might I might try and do a March Madness trip. We'll see, but yeah, man, it was just a blast to watch that game with my buddies and be there and like I don't know, man. I think I got the Bears. I got the Bears with the points. I got the Bears money line this weekend. So I think they're gonna I think they're gonna make a good run. So and I feel like you're just waiting to jump in, Andrew.
Well, I'm
So
just saying, I mean, congratulations on getting a quarterback for the first time in 40 years. I know that that's not a familiar feeling for Bears fans. It's been since Jim McMahon in 85, but you've got your guy under center. That's a good thing. You mentioned communal experiences, and that's truly an underrated part of sports fandom, especially after COVID and with so many restaurants and bars having closed up in the 5 or 6 years since then. It's something where a lot of people lost that third place and they haven't really gone back just because life's gotten in the way and that stuff happens. But my communal experience story comes in Vancouver of 2010. I interned at the Winter Olympics, and it was one of the greatest experiences of my life slash career. The gold medal hockey game that year was between the United States and Canada. Canada could have gone 0 for the rest of the Olympics. They needed to win that game. The United States, of course, their fierce rival. Ryan Miller, the goalie for the Buffalo Sabres, was between the pipes for Team USA, and he'd been standing on his head for 3 weeks. Underrated story that you're not going to hear from pretty much anybody else. Mike Emmerich lost his voice a week before the game. He was not talking off camera, and he was such a pro, nobody noticed. One of the coolest, most remarkable things I witnessed. Canada's up a goal late. I'm watching with fellow interns at the International Broadcasting Center in Vancouver. We hear a roar from the other side of the IBC. And it turns out we've been watching the game on a slight tape delay because a few seconds later, Team USA ties the game. They're going into overtime and everybody's pumped. Sidney Crosby winds up winning the game for Team Canada in overtime. And Josh, maybe I'm a terrible American. It would not be the first time anybody's called me that. I was okay with it. Here's why. I'm not sure how much you know about the city of Vancouver and how they handle losing important hockey games. People die. People die. Buildings get destroyed. It's not a good time. That night in Vancouver was one of the best parties I have ever been to. Places were open until 3, 4 in the morning. Everybody was congregating at the International Broadcasting Center because it was the last full day of the Olympics. The closing ceremonies were the next day. And so everybody's shoulder to shoulder, including all of the on-air people who were absolutely wonderful. And I noticed the entire Russian contingent going up an escalator on the far side of the building. And I don't know what came over me or how I would have even concluded this, but I turned to a couple of friends and I said, "Follow me." They looked at me sort of quizzically. And I pointed, and it's literally 20 or 30 people in Russian Federation jackets. And I said, where there are Russians, there is vodka. It turned out they were going to another party on the second level of the broadcasting center that had this rock band playing to about 2 or 3,000 people in this big ballroom with more open bars and everything. And just the entire city was just absolutely, it came alive that night. And that's something that I'll always take with me. And you get those experiences, whether you got money on the game or not, just being able to take part in something like that. You remember that for the rest of your life. And again, was I slightly perturbed that Team USA didn't get the job done? Maybe for a minute. And then I remembered the Vancouver Canucks not being able to get the job done in the Stanley Cup and the riot that would have taken place had Team USA gotten the gold medal at Canada's Olympics in Vancouver. Yeah, I'm okay with the way that turned out. That was a lot of fun, and you get stories like that, and you can't shake them, nor do you want to. So really cool. You got to be able to do that. And now we will head over to the nuts and bolts handicapping of our show. We will take a look at the late pick 4 at Gulfstream Park on Friday, January 16th. It's a 10 race card. We start with race number 7. This is a claiming event going 7 furlongs on the dirt. Thought this was a pretty wide open race. Josh, how did you see it?
Single.
Okay, there we go. Yep, you are absolutely listening to the correct program, folks. And by the way, if you're on YouTube, go down below, hit that like button, hit that subscribe button. Really helps us out. Who did you land on as a single here?
I like the 6 in this spot. And My Lady James. This is a horse stretching out a little bit here. Went nearly wire to wire last time out here at Gulfstream Park. Seems to be a horse that has got a couple of back races I think that fit in here. Obviously, I'm looking back at 2025. Had a earlier race at Gulfstream that I think just like absolutely towers over the field here on dirt. Now, granted, right, we're a different trainer, and this horse has switched barns multiple times, but the horse has been on synthetic ever since, and figures have looked fine, but I mean, hasn't really won. But I think that last race was him kind of coming back into form here, with that nice second in that claiming race. That time form figure of 84 fits in very well with what some of these other horses have been running lately. And if, like I said, if you go all the way back, that 90, I believe it was a 95 that he ran in March of last year. I mean, that race really towers over this field here. Your Moreline favorite, the 3 worth considering here, is the Carlos David horse. But this is a horse that's cutting back in distance slightly, right? So going from the 1 turn mile to 7 furlongs, went wire to wire last time out, but obviously that was going the mile here. And, it's tough to tell because when this horse went 6 furlongs, last, it was a fine effort, but I really think that this was a horse that has started to get better as distance had been added. If you look at that turf try, even at Gulfstream where they went the mile, so I get that it's still a 1 turn race, but I don't know. I just kind of feel like this might be a horse that wants to go that mile and 16th. Obviously it's a practical joke, so that 1 mile 7 furlongs probably does hit this horse straight in, right in the middle of the eyes. But I'm gonna take a shot here against the 3, and I'm gonna go with the second choice. My Lady James is a lone A in this race. Where did you land?
I am using number 3 worth considering, but I certainly didn't think that horse towered over the rest of this field. This feels more like a trainer play. Carlos David's been winning a lot at Gulfstream Park. He tends to do that. I'm also going to use My Lady James for a number of the same reasons you mentioned, but there are a couple others in here that I'm going to have on my ticket. My tepid top selection is actually the 8 Slender Slipper. And if you look at the dirt races this horse ran for Michael Morrison in the back half of 2025, you see 3 of them. You see a win and you see 2 seconds. There's not a lot this horse has done wrong since going to Michael Morrison's barn. He doesn't have a huge barn. He was just 2 for 10 in 2025, but it seems like He's found what this mare wants to do and has been able to get this horse going reasonably well. Rajiv Mirage knows this horse pretty well. He was aboard for the win 2 starts back over another runner that I'm also going to use in the form of number 1, Drink Deeply. But if you're looking at this race from the standpoint of just pure value, I think Slender Slipper is a value play at 6-1 simply because recently she hasn't run badly. Drink Deeply, meanwhile, did take a step forward last time out to be able to get the job done. Not sure how much of that was due to the sloppy track, but we'll see in this particular spot. I think this is much more wide open than the morning line would indicate. I'm 4 deep in here using 1, 3, 6, and 8. I'm using your single. If you're right, we both move on.
All right, and before we move on to our next race, obviously, if you are checking us out on YouTube, you see that we are showing the DRF, the time form, which is my main handicapping tool currently. So obviously, check out our friends at drf.com. And also make sure you hit like and subscribe on YouTube. If you're listening to us on podcast form, make sure you go ahead and submit a review. It really helps us out. Race 8. We have a 7.5 furlong turf allowance. We're going 2 turns here. And Andrew, I think we kind of agree with one horse definitely in this race, but I don't know. It's always tough when a horse like this 11 favorable scenario is on the also eligible list. How did you kind of see this race?
If favorable scenario runs, he does not lose. This is a case where you clearly have a horse that has had issues. This one has run 4 times and is a 6-year-old. You have to go back to February 11th, 2023 for his debut race. He was 3rd that day on dirt, and we didn't see him again for more than 2 years. He came back at Saratoga, and that maiden race that he won came back pretty sharp. He beat a horse named Johnny's Rendezvous by a head that day. Johnny's Rendezvous is not bad. Now, if you take a look on YouTube, you're going to be able to see the charts that we wind up using. There are some halfway decent horses in that particular spot. Johnny's Rendezvous has actually turned the corner and turned into a halfway decent dirt horse with a 112 time form rating back on November the 30th. That's a decent field. And that's a very good comeback considering what favorable scenario had gone through. Now, if you look at the more recent races, I think you see 2 fields that are just much better than what favorable scenario is going to line up against here. 2 back, he was 4th, beaten less than 2 lengths by Tenacious Leader at Keeneland. That race and the subsequent effort both led to 115 time form figures. If he runs a 115, nobody's touching him. And I don't think he even has to run a 115 in order to win. If he runs a 110, I think he probably wins this particular race, provided he draws in off of the also eligible list. If he runs, he's a single. If he doesn't, I'll be going 4 deep, and I'm going to include a horse that has had a piece of my heart for 4.5 years. Josh, I'm going to need you to do me a favor, and I might need you to play around with some stuff here. Can you please go to horse number 5, Ruse? Ruse has been a veteran of the racing ranks with 43 starts. Is there a way we can see career past performances for Ruse if you wind up just playing around with some stuff? Okay. Thank you very much for that. Can you do me a favor and scroll to the, let's say, September of 2021? Perfect. So you see that race on September 3rd where Ruse goes wire to wire, wins by 2 1/4 lengths. And I didn't have to look at the odds to remember that he was 9-1. Ruse was a member of a group of horses I call the Andrew 8. At Saratoga on September 3rd, 2021, I had 8 top pick winners in 10 races. It wound up cinching the all media handicapping crown for me. And guess what? If you've got a problem with it, beat me. If you can't beat me, shut up. And this is the stuff I get to brag about that nobody else gets to brag about because, Josh, picking 8 out of 10 top pick winners at Saratoga is really, really hard. Anyway, Ruse has had a special place in my heart ever since that day, and he comes into this one having found some of his best form. He's not quite the horse he was in 2021, 2022. Then again, who among us is the same person they were in 2021 or 2022? We've done a lot of living these last 4.5 years with unprecedented events happening every single day. But I will be using Ruse, and I'll also be using horses 2, 3, and 4 of that group. The one that intrigues me the most is actually the 3 Ironsides, who has run in a number of pretty fast races for Fausto Gutierrez, a winner two back against $35,000 claimers. He is pace dependent. He does probably need a setup, but there's some speed signed on in this particular spot, and I think he may very well get the pace that he wants. If he does, beneath Mario Gutierrez, who's been riding pretty well here at Gulfstream Park since shifting his tack over, I think he's got a pretty big shot. But again, all of this is contingent on favorable scenario and whether or not he runs. If he runs, I think the race is for second. If he doesn't run, I think it's a pretty wide open event, and you're going to wind up getting your price on whichever horse you like. Josh, what horses do you like in here?
Yeah, I do think that the 11's going to be an include for me here. Um, the last two time form figures of 115 obviously are stand out here with the rest of the field. And then even if you look at the kind of the class rating, you know, time form's got the set as a 111. So if you kind of look at the what favorable scenario's been running against 112, 114. So yeah, it is a bit of an easier group I think he's going up against in this spot. Um, my only real concern with a favorable scenario, uh, when I always feel like Gulfstream especially plays a little bit more forward on the turf, and I feel like favorable scenario is going to be one that's going to be kind of going to want to try and come, come late. He's going to want to close. Now, granted, um, I don't think he's going to be sitting, eighth in this group, right? I mean, I think you saw last time he sat pretty forward, and so I think if Irad can keep this horse forward, he's going to be really really hard to beat. Um, but I think there are two other horses in this field that do match up kind of well. I'm going to start with the two Carem Pass here. Jose D'Angelo trains. Edgar Zayas sees fit to ride. And this is the horse that obviously went wire to wire at Kentucky Downs last time this horse went out. Does have a couple of races here at Gulfstream. And this is the horse that has been more than happy to sit there and set the pace on in these races. Now, it's kind of funny because I don't know last time out went wire to wire going 7 furlongs going a mile, he just missed there. But I like I said, that race 4 back at Gulfstream Park, right? He set some a little bit of a fast pace and just kind of got caught there at the end. um Time form wise, he seems to fit in well with this group. He has one race that's at least in the realm of what the 11 has run. So I just think with the tactical advantage of being a leader in this race, I like the two in here, and then I also like the 6 Bite and Strike. Um, Now, granted, this is a Bill Mott horse here that Irad saw fit to ride last time out. Um, but Junior Alvarado gets aboard. He's kind of like I said, he's kind of like Mott's first call here. So I always like to see Junior on a Mott horse. And this is a horse that hasn't won since breaking his maiden at Ellis Park 3 back, but did that in pretty forward fashion, which, like I said, I think does tend to help here at Churchill Downs. I think last time or 2 back at Keeneland was just way too far back in that spot. Kind of got off to a not great start and just had to kind of make the best of a bad situation. Actually got a raw 113 time form, which, like I said, fits in with this 11. But it did get pace adjusted down to a 106. So maybe Craig thought that there was a too fast of a pace in there, and that kind of flattered that number. Um, and then Churchill Downs, if a horse kind of just goes off and runs a weird race at Churchill Downs in the turf, I'm at the point where I treat Churchill Downs almost like I treat Kentucky Downs. You either like the course or you don't, and some horses just don't like that course. It's just since they've replanted that grass, it's just been kind of a funky turf course. So, um, I'm not going to hold that against this horse here. I'm just go ahead and kind of cross the line through that, and I do think that this is a horse that is another one that's going to kind of be forwardly placed, and I think has got a shot. And like I said, especially if the 11 doesn't draw in, I mean, I think the 2 and 6 are all I need. But the 11 does draw in, I'm definitely going to be using as well.
Yeah, I think the race goes through the 11, and if the 11 does runs, I think is going to be a pretty popular single. 8 to 5 on the morning line, even with the big field, I would probably take the under on that just because of the connections involved. If the 11 does not run, you've got a pretty wide open race. So, going to be interesting to see how that unfolds as we move on to race number 9. And Josh, you and I could not possibly see this race any differently at all whatsoever. We had a lengthy conversation about it in our pre show meeting. I think this race goes through one trainer. You think this race goes through one horse. Tell me about digital ops.
Yeah, I think this is more of a. I mean, I think digital ops. If you look at some of the Saratoga races, obviously fits in here. Has got a nice race here at Gulfstream. At the start of 2025. With that 116 time form figure. And if you're somebody who's just looking at like the highlight figures, right, and sees, hey, well, Batten Down ran a 123, like I think you got to dig a little bit deeper than that, right? You look at Batten Down, and yes, 4 back he ran that 123, obviously going a mile and 3/16. But I don't know, the mile and 16th races, they don't seem as fast. Obviously, you got to look at the mine shaft, where kind of ran an even fourth there to Hall of Fame, Komoro Bino. Oh man, how do you pronounce that?
The horse that lost by a head.
There we go. And then Maycox Bay, uh, Comorbino Amoyd. Comorbino Amoyd. I think that's how it is.
I just
But
remember that horse being one of the ones that I think that horse ran off on Kentucky Derby Day a year or two ago and wound up holding on for a piece of it after some ridiculous fractions. But yeah, no, this horse has been running against some very good horses, but you've also got to consider that layoff, and I can't blame you if that scares you off of him.
yeah, and like Bill Mott, he's not a guy that I think has always got his horses cranked off that layoff, right? I think he usually likes them to have a race. I want to say he's like 10 or 11%, somewhere after that. The 11 or sorry, I'll actually pull up the stat. 180 days, he's 11% with a $1 ROI. And unfortunately, the two is also coming off of a pretty sizable layoff. Now he's a little bit better when he's uh 2 to 6 months there, right? He's 16% in there. So um I could see maybe using the two, but I don't know. I think both of these horses kind of took a slight little like step back in their last starts, coming in here off of layoffs, and that just kind of led me to the three. Which, granted, right, you basically say the same exact thing about this horse, that went to Parks and just I don't know, just packed it in, set a slow pace and just had nothing there. So I don't know. I mean, this is Saffy's backyard. Tyler Gaffleone sees fit to ride. Um, I don't know. I just thought that the three. Um, I had a little bit more faith in the three here, yeah, off the layoffs than I did off of using the 1 and 2. So I kind of just faded the 1 and 2. I'm gonna use the three and hope I can get past with just that one horse.
So I would like digital ops a lot more if this race was a marathon, say mile and a quarter, mile and 3/8, because it looked like that's what this horse really wanted to do. Last year, wound up running second, beating a neck in the Birdstone behind Parchment Party, who wound up trying the Melbourne Cup, if I remember correctly, late last year. Hasn't run since September, has figures that make sense. I'm just not sure this short stretch mile and a 16th is really what he wants. I do think he'll be better next time out with a start under his belt. My top pick was the two Stars and Stripes. There's a very important distinction that I think you need to make between those two runaway wins and everything else. Those two runaway wins came when Stars and Stripes was allowed to run with Lasix. He gets Lasix back here, second off of a freshening. And look, last time out, he ran in the Dwyer. He got beat by Disco Time, who's going to be one of the favorites in the Pegasus later this month. I can't hold that against him too much. He stretches back out to two turns. He should love this route of ground. He is my top selection, but I have to wonder why Sahin Savachi is the one that's on him as opposed to one of Bill Mott's first call riders, one of whom, Junior Alvarado, rides the one batten down. For that reason, I felt the need to use batten down just to be safe. But if 5-2 holds up on Stars and Stripes, I will have a win play on that one solely because we have seen that at his best, he's excellent. And I think he's going to be in a position to be at his best, given that he's not coming off of a super long layoff in this spot like some of the other top contenders, and he's getting significant class relief in here. Give me 2-1 in that order. If Bill Mott wins, I move on.
And that moves us on to the last race, race 10, going a mile here on the turf. We got a claiming race for 4-year-olds and up. Where did you land here?
So I thought there was a pretty intriguing value play here in the form of the 5 Bottle Rocket. Bottle Rocket takes a drop down in class for Mike Trombetta, who is a very, very good trainer in the Mid Atlantic area. And he's got some form from mid 2025 that stacks up reasonably well. If you look at those races at Colonial in July and August, they're not bad. She then ran in a couple of off the turf events, got back on the turf at Laurel, was very wide, not a lot of pace, had a 2-month layoff, came to Gulfstream, didn't run all that well. They drop her in for a tag for 35,000. This hits me as a significantly weaker field than some of the ones that she's been running against. And I do think she's got a shot at a bit of a price. The other A horse that I've got is the 8 Ready to Battle, who was a 2-back winner at Woodbine. They then tried the synthetic with her, and I just think she's far better on turf than she is on the synthetic track. If she runs back to that 2-back effort for Mark Casse as another class dropper, I think she's got a big chance in here. However, if we wind up getting our single to run in race number 8, I will be 6 deep to be able to close this out. I'll be using the 1, 5, 6, 7, 8, and 10. I think this is a pretty wide open race. I'm not sold on any of the likely favorites in here. The 2 A's are the 2 that I've mentioned, Bottle Rocket and Ready to Battle. And I'm hoping one of those 2 gets the job done and winds up closing out this pick 4 with a little bit of a price that knocks out a couple of tickets in the pool. Because look, if the 11 winds up running in race number 8, that horse is going to be a pretty heavy favorite. I'm using both of the Mott runners in race number 9. They're both going to take some money. So trying to get the 5 or the 8 home. But look, I'm 6 deep. It's not like I have a super strong opinion, but those 2 do hit me as value propositions at anywhere close to those morning line prices.
Yeah, I mean, I see the race similar to you in that I think it's a spread race. I also have very similar horses as you do. I have the 6, 7, 11, 1, and 10 written down. I'm going to start with probably the 11 horse, North End Lady. And this is a horse that at the end of last year, had a couple of nice races at Saratoga. Had a nice allowance win, and then it just kind of looked like the wheels fell off. Was kind of going into tougher races, and I think like similar to another horse that you mentioned earlier, I think this is a horse that is getting some class relief here. Does have some races that that obviously fit in here. I mean, and more importantly, I went back to the beginning of last year in March where this horse ran a 105 time form here at Gulfstream Park. So is a horse that I think does like this Gulfstream Park surface. So I think the 11 North End Ladies probably my top pick in this race. The number 7 Simply Striking. This isn't a horse that's been off for over a year, so obviously it's going to be tough to know what to expect with this horse. This was a trainer I had to. I like did a double take because I was like, I don't even know this name, and so I'm gonna go ahead and pull up on DRF because it's usually a little easier to read there. Mohammed Jahaludi, who's yet to have a win this year, and is 9%, so it's 1 for 11 first time with the trainer. But I did think that the last race for this horse at Tampa looked pretty good. Now, granted, we are going pretty far back to the end of that horse's 3-year-old season, basically. Um, but I kind of looked at this race and I thought that there's a if that horse is running back to what he did, there's a good shot that he could get the lead. And if not him, I think the sixth, no other like you, shipping in here from Del Mar, leaving Doug O'Neill's barn to come into the Kent Sweet or the Kent Sweezy barn, and yeah, I think this horse has definitely got some races that fit. Looked like a horse that was starting to get a little bit better and better at the end of last year. Was going from basically running mid 80s to high to mid hundreds, high 90s. So I think he was one that was kind of improving. Is coming in here off a 53-day layoff, and is another horse that I think could be your speed in this race, and gets Luis Saez aboard. And I mean, if you want a horse on the lead in a turf race of any length or distance, uh, I bet there's few better than Luis Saez to do it. So, really like those horses. I think the one cheekiest, he's kind of a weird one. Leaving Mike Pipey's barn, going to is it Neil Tomlinson? Nicholas Tomlinson, sorry. Nicholas Tomlinson's barn here, and this is a horse that hasn't won in a while. Won at the beginning of 2024, but does have some races that fit. But this is another horse that I think wants to do his best running late, and I think, like I said, sometimes at Gulfstream Park, that's a big ask, even if you are the best horse. But obviously, this horse has got some ability, and has got some back races, so I'll include as well as a B. And then the last horse is the 10, Mary Marguerite, and this maybe is more of an A type horse. Um, I mean, this is a horse that is lightly raced, and I think just is a classic example of they just was in too deep last time out, and now is kind of coming back to her level, right? Broke her maiden going a mile and 16th in on the turf. Immediately won a synth race on the synthetic on off the turf race, and then they went to start her allowance company, and horse ran okay, just kind of ran even there. Um, Took a slight step forward on um, uh, speed figures, but now gets Tyler Gaffleone aboard. The horse, I think off that last race, he kind of did something different by coming from pretty far off of it, and was very very wide in that race. So I think with Tyler Gaffleone aboard, might get a little bit of a better trip here, and I expect to see a bit of improvement from the 10. And with a little bit of improvement, I think that 10 also fits in with this group. So I got 5 horses in here. I got the 6, 7, 11, and I got the 1 and 10.
We agree on 4 out of the 5. It's that kind of race. It's a tricky way to end the card. And this is one of those where you're going to get your price on whatever horse you like. Big field, you got to go digging a little bit to try to find stuff. And look, that's how you wind up scoring, is having an opinion on a race like this and winding up being correct. So hopefully we can get there, and hopefully we wind up getting lucky.
Yeah, Andrew, and I got your ticket up here. I don't know if you want to kind of talk through it a little bit.
Sure. So it's actually 2 tickets. We have one for if my best bet of the sequence, the 11 and race number 8, runs, and we have one if it doesn't. If the 11 runs, it's a single, and it's a $24 ticket for 50 cents that goes as follows: 1368 with 11, with 12, with 156, 7, 8, and 10. If the 11 scratches, it is a completely different sequence, and I need a completely different ticket. This one costs $32. We'll go 1368 with 2345, with 12, with 58. And I also admit that only going too deep in that last leg may very well come back to bite me. But I needed to also go deep in race number 8 because if the 11 doesn't run, that's a wide open race there as well. Hopefully, there are some scratches elsewhere to where I can maybe add a horse or two into race number 10 in that instance. But as it stands right now, $24 ticket if my best bet runs, $32 ticket if it doesn't.
Yeah, and I went with the two singles in the dirt races. So I went with 6, with 2, 6, 11, with 3, with 6, 7, 11, and the 1 and 10 as B's there. If you just play that caveman style, it's a $7.50 base. Obviously, I'll probably press my A's a little bit, and and I'll use the B's in some tickets. But yeah, I'm trying to be narrow in those dirt races and hope that we're able to get through those and have a little bit more of a spread in the turf races. Andrew, we're close. We got
Well,
6 with 211. We don't have a consensus in the third leg, right? So if you're playing at home, or if you're Mr. Double Shout Out, he likes to sometimes combine our tickets. So maybe he'll play 1, 2, 3, with 1, 6, 7, 10 in the
that's
last
a
race. So
$12 play. I think you could do worse there.
yeah. What else you got going on this week, Andrew?
Well, let's see. This weekend, I'm going to be teaching some kids how to gamble, which is going to be fun. My one of my wife's friends has 2 kids, and they have game nights every so often. So there's board game night. I don't know what game we're playing, but I can assure you, I will find some way to try to gamble and make some money. And my wife will act like she has no idea who I am. So that'll be fun. But hey, she's the one that married me. She knew what she was getting into, and stuff like that is why. And also, being honest, knowing those kids, at least one of them would be very interested in learning more. It's the duty that we all have as degenerates in this space. But what do you got going on?
Oh, we got our live stream tonight, Thursday night, 8 p.m. Central, 9 p.m. Eastern. Got to get used to the new time with Caleb and Mountain Time. We're going to be taking a look at the Fairgrounds card on Saturday. So getting ready for, Derby season is here. Obviously points have been awarded already, but I always feel like Lecomte weekend is really the start. Not necessarily like we're not seeing the A-listers necessarily. I mean, sometimes we do. Sometimes we get a surprise here or there, but it starts to at least it starts to get the juices going. It starts to get the blood flowing, and then obviously we'll have Pegasus next week, and then we start rolling into some of the other beginning preps. Before we get to the second level preps where we start to really see the big name horses, but. Got that, and then we should have an episode of You've Got to Be Shot tinning me out later this week, so be on the lookout for that. But other than that, check us out at ontherwronglead.com, at wrong_lead on Twitter. I am at Cherry Drank. Andrew is at Andrew Champagne. Check out our friends at drf.com. Have a good weekend, everybody. Let's make some money.